question is, who are God's chosen people?
The first thing I want to talk about is the appearance of the ancient Hebrew Israelites.
You need to know who the true Jews are.
No matter how much scripture you all are presented with regarding who the Hebrews in the Bible were and who they are in the earth today.
See, I've been doing a lot of reading, and I'm starting to believe that God's chosen people are not the Jews.
I feel like now it's my responsibility, now that I know the truth, to get it out there.
A lot of people say, well, what's the purpose? Why do we need to know this? We need to know this because in the end days, you're going to be following one thing, and you're going to be led right into the fire.
And this is from Psalm 83. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, come, and let us cut them off from being a nation. Let us cut them off from being a nation. Let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance.
Now I have to tell you this, if you have a new King James Version, it's going to take the word black out. It's going to take the word black out. You need to go into an older King James Version, and it will have the proper words in there.
I think that it's a shame what has happened. I think that the black race has been kept in the dark, depleted and robbed of their wealth. I think that they've been robbed of their integrity, their self-esteem. I think that was all by design. That was all by design. That was all by design. That was.
If y'all are going to believe these lies, you're going to get misled, and that's the purpose of this. It's not about color. It's not about this and that. It's about identity theft. Identity theft. People's identity was stolen.
And who they are in the earth today, which would be the so-called Negroes, Hispanics, the Native Americans, the Aborigines.
A couple of other scriptures are Lamentations 5 and verse 10 and Job 30:30. Those also refer to the skin color of the Israelites as being black.
There's certain passages in the Bible that refer to God's children as being black. One in particular is a Song to Solomon, where it physically describes Solomon. And
it's all a show. All these leaders of all these countries are part of a 1% club, okay? And you're not part of it. So stop believing their lies and start listening to some of us here on the ground in the trenches that are doing the research. You're going to be following who you think are the real Jews in the leadership, and you're going to be led right into the fire. You're going to be led right into the meat.
Shalom, shalom, shalom to the house of Israel. It's your brother Obadiah bint Israel. We're back again. We're going to continue tonight with Shaul's Israelite letters, and we're going to finish up Galations chapters 4 through 6. Before we get into chapter 4, last night we brought something out, but we didn't go into depth about it. And what we brought out is everyone knows the prophecy. Abraham is promised to be a father of many nations. And inside the Sunday church, we were taught that this meant any and everybody who comes to believe in the Messiah through faith, that there'll be a son of Abraham. Let me repeat that. According to the Christian doctrine that we were taught inside the church, Abraham is promised by the Most High to be a father of many nations. And this means that you must come to the Father by faith, having faith in the Son, and this makes you a son of Abraham because of your faith. The problem is when we dig deep into these scriptures, that type of teaching doesn't line up with the precepts and it doesn't make sense. Last night we brought out in Genesis 25. Genesis 25, Abraham sends his own physical sons away from Isaac. He sends his own sons that came from his own flesh away from Isaac. So if Abraham is to be a father of many nations, why would he send his own blood-born sons away? That doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. The only conclusion that makes sense is to fulfill the prophecy that Abraham will be a father of many nations. The many nations came from Jacob. The 12 tribes of Jacob make up 12 nations. So we brought that out last night, that each individual tribe is an actual nation. So we touched on it and then we moved on, but it deserves a lot more detail. So we're going to bring up the account we read from Josephus last night. We'll bring that one up, and then we'll go into the Bible and bring up the scriptures to verify what we're saying. So hopefully on your screen you can see the account of Josephus. This is Josephus' complete works. You can just download this PDF, search for the complete works of Josephus. One of the books inside this collection is called Against Apion. He writes a pretty much a debate where he just refutes everything this Gentile was saying about our Hebrew race. And his name was Apion or Apon. And against Apion, Josephus verifies that each individual tribe of Israel is an individual nation. So let's repeat what we went over last night. This is Against Apion, Book 1, and you just can navigate to section number 7. And Josephus records, "For our forefathers did not only appoint the best of these priests and those that attended upon the divine worship for that design from the beginning, but made provision that the stock of the priest should continue unmixed and pure. For he who is partaker of the priesthood must propagate of a wife of the same nation." I repeat it. For he who is partaker of the priesthood must propagate of a wife of the same nation. Josephus is confirming that the Levites are not permitted according to Torah to marry another nation inside of Israel. The Levites can't marry someone from the nation of Judah, Simeon, Nephthalim, so forth and so on. To keep our priesthood pure and unmixed, a Levite has to marry someone from his same nation. That's how our ancestors kept our priesthood pure. He goes on, and I'll read some more. He goes on to talk about captivity. Let's go where he mentions that. He mentions that if a woman is taken into captivity, then she's not permitted because it's questionable if she was touched by a foreigner. Okay, here it is. Let me go to here it is here. He says, I'm going to read this part right here. And this is during captivity. If one of the Levite women goes into captivity, she's now excluded from being a priest's wife. He says, but if any war falls out, such as have fallen out, a great many of them already, when Antiochus Epiphanes made an invasion upon our country, as also when Pompey the Great and when Quintillus Varus did so also, and principally in the wars that have happened in our own times. Those priests that survived them composed new tables of genealogy out of the old records and examined the circumstances of the women that remain. For still they do not admit of those that have been captives, as suspecting that they had conversation with some foreigners. So we kept our priesthood pure by making sure a Levite married someone from his own nation. And if it so happened that that woman, that Hebraic, who's a Levite, if she is taken captive, then she's no longer eligible to marry a priest, because it's not, we can't be sure if she's been touched by a stranger. All praises. So now we're gonna get some precepts in the scrolls that verify the same thing. Each tribe of Israel is a nation unto itself. And that's how Abraham became a father of many nations. The many nations is the 12 tribes of Israel. So we're going to read Judges 12, and we're going to read maybe the first 6 or 7 verses. And it reads, "And the men of Ephraim gathered themselves together and went northward, and said unto Jephthah, Wherefore passed thou over to fight against the children of Ammon, and did not call us to go with you? We will burn thy house upon thee with fire. And Jephthah said unto them, I and my people were at great strife with the children of Ammon. And when I called you, ye delivered me not out of their hands." Verse 3, "And when I saw that ye delivered me not, I put my life in my hands and passed over against the children of Ammon, and Yahuwah delivered them into my hand. Wherefore then are ye come up unto me this day to fight against me?" So what's going on here, family, is you have two tribes arguing, and the other tribe, the tribe of Ephraim, is approaching Jephthah, who is from the tribe of Manasseh, saying, why didn't you come get us to go fight against the Ammonites? And the underlying issue here, I believe, is, the treasures once you defeat a nation. But anyway, so the Ephraimites are approaching him with a beef. Why didn't you come get us? Let's continue on. Verse 4. "Then Jephthah gathered together all the men of Gilead and fought with Ephraim. And the men of Gilead smote Ephraim, because they said, Ye Gileadites are fugitives of Ephraim among the Ephraimites and among the Manassites." So here we can see there's being a difference mentioned or distinguished between the tribes. The Ephraimites and the Gileadites, Gileadites are part of Manasseh, but you're seeing they're making a distinction between the tribes. Each tribe is a nation within itself. Let's continue on and get the context of this. Verse 5. "And the Gileadites took the passages of Jordan before the Ephraimites. And it was so that when those Ephraimites which were escaped said, Let me go over, that the men of Gilead said unto them, Are you an Ephraimite? If he said, No, then said they unto him, Say now, Shibboleth. And he said, Sibboleth, for he could not frame to pronounce it right. Then they took him and slew him at the passages of Jordan. And there fell at that time of the Ephraimites 42,000. So there was a beef between the two nations, the Ephraimites and the Gileadites. And they would test the Ephraimite to see if they could pronounce this word. If they pronounced the word Sibboleth and mispronounced it, instead of saying Shibboleth, they knew that this person was an Ephraimite and they killed them. The takeaway here, family, is each tribe is a nation of itself. And that's all we need for that. Let's get one more witness, and we're going to get this from the New Testament. Let's go to Matthew. We're going to pick up the last witness about the tribes being individual nations. And then we're going to get back into Galations chapter 4. 24. Matthew chapter 24, and we'll go down to Matthew 24, and let me see here. Verse 30. Matthew chapter 24, and let's go down to verse 30. It says, "And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then all the tribes of the earth shall mourn. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn." Family, you can see here, tribe is being used synonymously with nations. So the fulfillment of the prophecy that Abraham would be a father of many nations is not in that Christian context of the word. Abraham being a father of many nations can't mean every nation under the sun, where Abraham is building a Frankenstein. Because we went over last night in Genesis 25, Abraham sent his own sons born of his loins away from Isaac. So Abraham being a father of many nations has been fulfilled through the line of Jacob. 12 sons of Jacob became 12 patriarchs of Israel. 12 nations is enough to satisfy Abraham being a father of many nations. So I just wanted to bring that understanding out because we didn't give it enough attention last night. So now let's get back and let's finish up this letter to the Galatians. And again, we're not going to recap everything. If you're just tuning in, you really need to go back and start with Shaul's letter to the Romans. And that's when we lay a lot of the foundation. We know what Greek means now. We know when he refers to the Torah, whether he's saying that certain parts of the Torah is dead. If he's referring to the Torah, Mishpachah, he can only be talking to the house of Israel. If he uses the word brethren, the word brethren is not in the Christian sense that we were taught inside the church. He uses brethren because he knows these people are from the seed of Jacob. What else? We now know that when he called these Israelites Greeks or Grecians, we know why he calls the Israelites Greeks. We got that understanding inside of Maccabees. What else? We also established anytime Shaul quotes a prophet, he starts off as it is written, as it was said. If Shaul quotes a prophet, well, once you do the research, all the prophets were only sent to Israel. So if Shaul is quoting one of their prophecies, he can't be talking to another nation because it's blasphemy to put a prophecy for Israel onto a stranger. So that's some of the things we brought out. These are the foundations that you can't forget as you read Shaul's letters. So with that being said, let's finish up Galatians. There's really no need to, because no writer worth their salt changes their audience inside the same letter without it being explicitly written. So we proved last night, based on all the history, chapters 1 through 3 all mention Hebrewisms, all mention Hebrew history. The chances of Paul changing his audience in these remaining 3 chapters are slim to none. But for the sake of being complete, we're going to finish the letter. As always, Mishpachah, this is just teaching for truth's sake. Because once we correct Paul's letters and identify his audience, we can really throw out a lot of the false doctrine that we were taught inside the church. Once we correctly identify that Shaul is writing to Israelites, we can throw away a lot of the false doctrine that we were taught inside the church. As always, family, this is not to offend, insult, degrade anyone. This is teaching truth for truth's sake. We're not about that here at the Torah group. We're about reuniting, reawakening the house of Israel scattered to the four corners of the world. So with that being said, let's get into chapter 4. And I'm not going to beat a dead horse. So the points we brought out in all the previous chapters, the points we brought out in Romans and Corinthians, we're just going to mention them and roll right through them. So let's go to chapter 4, and we'll start with verse 4. Chapter 4, verse 4. Shaul says, "But when the fullness of the time was come, Yahuwah sent forth his son, made of a woman, made under the law." Again, he sent forth his son. Who was the son sent to? Matthew 1:21. He shall save his people from their sins. Matthew 1 verse 21. Cross-reference that. Again, we see that he was made under the law. Who was made under the law? Christ was made under the law. Who was the law given to? The Israelites. Let's go into verse 5. To redeem them that were under the law. What nation was under the law? There's only one nation in history who's ever been under the instructions, the Torah of Yahuwah, and that nation is Israel. So, again, we're not going to beat a dead horse. It's plain to see he's talking about the Israelites. The Galations are Israelites. Let's move on down to verse 6. He says, "And because ye are sons, Yah has sent forth the spirit of his son into your hearts, crying, Abba, Father." Abba is Hebrew for father. If these people are Greeks, why use a Hebrew word? If these people are Greeks, why not use the Greek word for father? Again, these are just context clues. Reading is fundamental. Now, I'm being a little facetious, but seriously, you have to put these scriptures back in context. We have to put the we have to put the Hebraic understanding back inside these records. He says, crying Abba, Father. You wouldn't use a Hebrew word if you're not talking to Hebrews. Let's move on. Verse 7. Wherefore, mouse working a little bit better tonight. Wherefore thou art no more a servant, but a son. And if a son, then an heir of Yah through Christ. Again, this is one of the scriptures that is constantly butchered inside Sunday churches. So, inside Sunday churches, we were taught that anyone who comes to the knowledge of Yeshua through faith is now a son, and he could be fellow heirs with the Israelites. But again, all we have to do is go back into our foundation, and we'll get Isaiah. Let's go to Isaiah. Let's read it again. Wherefore thou art no more a servant. So there's a change. There's a transformation happening. Someone is going from being a servant to being a son. Because of Yeshua's sacrifice, someone went from being a servant, and now he has the status of a son. Let's see who has the status of being a son. Let's see who went from being a servant to a son. Isaiah 45 and verse 4. Isaiah chapter 45 and verse 4. I know what. Let's just go back up. Let's get the full understanding. We'll read the first 4 verses. Isaiah 45 verses 1 through 4. Thus saith Yahuwah to his anointed, to Cyrus, whose right hand I have holden, to subdue nations, before him, and I will loose the loins of kings, to open before him the two-leaved gates, and the gates shall not be shut. I will go before you and make the crooked places straight. I will break in pieces the gates of brass, and cut in sunder the bars of iron. And I will give thee the treasures of darkness and hidden riches. I'm sorry, family. I will give thee the treasures of darkness and hidden riches of secret places, that thou mayest know that I, Yahuwah, which called you by thy name, am the Elohim of Israel. So Yahuwah is talking to Cyrus, who is king of Persia. Yahuwah is telling Cyrus, I'm going to bless you. I'm going to give you the hidden treasures of these other nations. And I'm going to do all this so you can know that I am the Elohim. I'm the ruler. I'm the judge of Israel. Verse 4. For Jacob, my servant's sake, and Israel, my elect. So who has went from being a servant to a son in Galations? For Jacob, my servant's sake. So Jacob, or the 12 tribes of Israel, has transformed from being a servant, and now because of the sacrifice of Yeshua and his blood that makes atonement for us, we now have the status of sonship. So you can't put these Hebrewisms on every nation under the sun. There's no nation under the sun that was ever in covenant with Yahuwah but the nation of Israel. All praises. So we're back in Galatians. Where did we stop? That was verse 7. You see it here again. Wherefore thou art no more a servant. Isaiah 45 verse 4. Jacob goes from being a servant to a son. All praises. Let's go down. We don't have to beat a dead horse. We don't have to go through every verse. Let's jump down to verse 27. Galatians 4 and 27. Shaul records, for it is written, rejoice, thou barren that bearest not. Break forth and cry, thou that travailest not. For the desolate have many more children than she which have a husband. So remember, we just said in the introduction that anytime we see that phrase, for it is written, he goes on to quote a prophet. So who is he quoting here? Who's barren? Let's see who Shaul is quoting here. Let's see who is barren. Isaiah 54. Again, the Sunday churches just gloss over these verses, get the organ playing, you get all that hooping and hollering, and nothing is making sense. So this is Isaiah 54. Sing, O barren, thou that did not bear. Break forth into singing and cry aloud, thou that did not travail with child. For more are the children of the desolate than the children of the married wife, saith Yahuwah. So this is a prophecy for Israel. And to get the understanding of that, all we have to do is go back to the beginning of Isaiah. Isaiah tells you who his prophecy is for. All the prophets tell you who they're talking to. Isaiah 1 and 1. The vision of Isaiah, the son of Amos, which he saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. So the whole scroll of Isaiah, every chapter, every verse is something pertaining to Judah and Jerusalem. So when Shaul comes on the scene and quotes Isaiah in Galatians, you can't put that prophecy on a foreign nation. It's blasphemy. Shaul quotes Isaiah because he knows that prophecy is for Israel. the whole gospel of Christ, and we went over this last night, the gospel of Yeshua is the restoration of the two houses. The two sticks are becoming one inside Yeshua's hand. All praises. So, I'm not going to beat a dead horse. Let's move on to chapter 5. Tonight shouldn't take that long. We're just going to go through the Hebrewisms and say shalom. Galatians chapter 5, verse 2. Behold, I, Paul, say unto you, that if ye be circumcised, Yeshua shall profit you nothing. Verse 3, he continues, for I testify again to every man that is circumcised, that he is a debtor to the whole law. Again, he's mentioning the law. The law was only given to the Israelites, so only the Israelites were trying to keep circumcision. Now, there's an underlying issue here. Shaul is not telling them that the Torah is done away with. He's telling them, if you're practicing the Torah, if you're still practicing the customs out of righteousness, thinking that this is the way now, you're in error. We don't circumcise now for righteousness. We circumcise because it's part of the contract. But righteousness now comes from faith in Yeshua. So there's two underlying things to keep in mind here, family. He's talking about customs or laws of the Torah. The Torah is only given to Israel. So we know these are Israelites. But for those grace doctrine preachers, he's not saying that this law, statutes, commandments are done. He's letting them know, he's trying to tell them, we don't practice these things for righteousness now. Because if you're practicing these customs of the Torah, thinking that this brings you righteousness, then you have to go and do everything in the Torah for your righteousness. And that means animal sacrifice. After Yeshua came and died and resurrected, we don't have to do animal sacrifice anymore. We keep the other parts of the commandments. It's part of the contract. The only thing changed in our contract is that animal sacrifice. Yeshua is the ultimate sacrifice. I'm not going to get into that, but all praises. The point here, family, the Galatians are Israelites. And again, the law is mentioned. Verse 4 is just more talk of the law. Christ has become of no effect unto you, whosoever of you are justified by the law. This is the issue here, family. He's not saying that the Torah or the laws and statutes are done. He's saying, if you're thinking or using the law to justify you, then you are falling from grace. It's two issues. It's an underlying issue going on. And that's pretty much the basis of all his letters. He's telling them, if you're keeping the statutes for your righteousness, brothers, you're wrong. But he's not saying the Torah is done. Because what happened when Shaul's life was on the line? When his homeboys that he used to run with, the same Israelites that he was persecuting the other Israelites with, they came and turned on Shaul. And they gave Shaul up to be murdered. And what was Shaul's defense when he stood before the judges, the Romans? Shaul told them, I have not transgressed any of the laws of my forefathers. Well, this would have been the perfect time for Paul to tell them, yes, I'm preaching a new gospel. Yes, I'm telling people that Moses is done because we're under the grace of Yeshua. Paul didn't do that. Paul's defense was, I have kept all the laws of my forefathers. So here he's pointing out that whosoever of you who try to be justified by the Torah, you're falling from grace. We keep most of the Torah because it's part of the contract. The only part that's changed, you know what, let's get it. I'm going to show you the only part of the Torah that's changed. And this is for all the grace preachers out here that says you're under grace. Well, you know what? Let's do this. I'm gonna give you two. So for all the Sunday preachers who say we're under grace and there's no more law, and the law is bondage, let's read Hebrews 8:8. It says, we'll start at verse 7. For if the first covenant had been faultless, then should no place have been sought for the second. For finding fault with them, he saith, behold. Let me stop here. For finding fault with them, family, this is a contradiction, because when you read Psalms 119 is a love letter to the Torah. Psalms 119 extols the Torah, how the laws are wonderful, the laws are pure, the laws are perfect. Even Shaul says in Romans that I know the law is holy, I know the law is perfect, but I'm flawed. So now if Paul's telling you that he's found fault with the laws, this is a contradiction, and our records are garbage. Paul is not saying that the Most High found fault with his own laws. For finding fault with them refers to our forefathers. The Most High found fault with our forefathers who had a stiff-necked heart. So he says, for finding fault with them, the forefathers, he said, behold, the days come, saith Yahuwah, I'm going to make a new covenant with who? The house of Israel and the house of Judah. Okay, a new covenant is coming, right? Let's drop down to verse 10. What is this new covenant? For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, saith Yahuwah. I will put my laws into their mind and write them in their hearts. So the new covenant that's coming is not here yet. It's the same Torah we have from the beginning. It's just now we don't have to wear fringes. We don't have to keep them on our doorposts, because Yeshua is going to come back, clean us up, and he's going to put the law, statutes, commandments in our hearts and minds. It's going to be second nature. So for my Sunday preachers who saying they're under new covenant, we're new covenant kingdom kids, we're new covenant Christians and all that, the new covenant has not started yet. Because for the new covenant to start, the two houses of Israel have to be reunited. And if you are a new covenant, why you're not following this law, statutes, and commandments? Because the law, statutes, and commandments say you're supposed to eat clean. You're supposed to keep the Shabbat. You're supposed to keep Feast of Tabernacles. You're supposed to keep trumpets. So if you're a new covenant Christian, a new covenant kid, or all that mess, you're not following the covenant. So now we brought that out. Let's show you what changed in our contract. Since Yeshua came, there's been a change, but not the whole covenant is done away with. I think I want 7. Hebrews 7. So there's a change in our contract. The whole contract is not null and void. Let's get 7 and 13. I think I want. Bear with me 1 second, because I didn't have this written down, but I know it's here. Let me go back up to the top. Here it is. I'm sorry, Mishpachah. So we were saying that Paul's not telling them that the law is done. There's been a change. Righteousness no longer comes from keeping the covenant. Righteousness now is directly a gift from Yeshua for the Israelites. But that doesn't mean we throw away all the Torah. It's right here in black and white. He says, for the priesthood being changed, there is made of necessity a change also of the law. I read it again. For the priesthood being changed, there is made of necessity a change also of the law. How do you get termination from change? How can you interpret a change also of the law as the law is terminated? It's false doctrine. The Sunday church is teaching our people false doctrine that leads to perdition. The Torah, law, statutes, and commandments are live in effect. We no longer have to sacrifice animals to get back right with Yah. Yeshua is our sacrifice. So it's there in black and white, family, because there's a change in the priesthood. We went from being under the Levitical priesthood. Now we're under the priesthood of Yeshua, who came from the tribe of Judah. There was nothing mentioned about the Jews being priests. So our priesthood is now changed. And so since the priesthood went from the Levites, we no longer sacrifice animals. We have the blood of Yeshua that covers us. We come with a contrite heart, and we come with all honesty, and we repent for our transgressions. And now we have redemption through the blood of Yeshua. But there's a change of the law, not a termination. All praises. So let's go back to Galations. I just had to show you that, family. It really burns me up that these Sunday preachers have our people on their way to hell. And it's all because they're not reading. They're reading too fast. Reading is fundamental. Slow down. Turn your music off. Stop all that screaming. Stop all the theatrics and slow down, and let's get some understanding. I'm preaching better than y'all saying amen. Somebody gonna make me shout up in here. Y'all gonna make me preach in here. Take off my jacket. Touch the neighbor 5 times. Spin around 5 times. It's time out for all that foolishness. Let's get some understanding and come back to our Father in all righteousness. So let's go back to Galatians 4. And again, it doesn't take all night now with Galatians 5. We have moved on to 5, I believe. We have moved on to 5. So once you see it, it doesn't take all night. And what verse did we leave off on? Galatians 5. Oh, was we still on 4? I thought we was on 5. See, I lose my track. I get caught up in it. We was on verse. We was on verse 5. Chapter 5, verse 5. I'm sorry, Mr. Picard. So we're on Galatians 5, verse 5. I'm sorry about that. So he says, for we through the Spirit wait for the hope of righteousness by faith. For we through the Spirit wait for the hope of righteousness by faith. So what are we waiting for? What are we hoping for? Well, first of all, let's identify, for we through the Spirit, there's only one Spirit we're operating from. We're operating from the Most High Spirit. So this is the Ruach of the Most High. The Most High is the Ruach. He is the Most High Spirit. So, since we know the Most High is the Ruach, and through His Spirit we hope for something, well, Amos 3:1. Amos 3:1. Out of all the families of the earth, I've only known Israel. So this can't be to another nation. So he says, through the Most High, we hope and wait for something, right? Let's see what we're hoping and waiting for. Let's go to Acts. Let's go to Acts 1, and let's see what we're hoping and waiting for. Acts 1, and we'll pick it up at 10. He says, and while they looked steadfastly toward heaven as he went up, behold, 2 men stood by them in white apparel, which also said, Ye men of Galilee, why stand ye gazing up into heaven? This same Yeshua, which is taken up from you into heaven, shall so come in like manner as ye have seen him go into heaven. So we, through the Spirit of the Most High, we're waiting and hoping in righteousness for Yeshua to return to gather us. Ye men of Galilee, we went over this last night. Galilee is another word or a jargon, a Hebrewism for northern Israel. When Yeshua started his ministry, he was in an area known as the Sea, Galilee of the Gentiles. He was in an area called Galilee of the Gentiles. And in that area, you had the tribes of Zebulun and Naphtali and other of the northern kingdoms there where Yeshua started his ministry. So this angel says, Ye men of Galilee. He's talking to northern Israel. Because remember, not all the Jews were disciples, or not all the disciples were Jews. I believe most of the disciples are all northern kingdom. I don't think any of the disciples were from the tribe of Judah. So we hope through the Most High for the we hope through the Ruach. We're hoping through the Most High Spirit, hoping to see Yeshua return to gather us. So how do we know he's returning to gather us? Let's go up to Acts 1 and is it 6? Acts 1 and 6. This is what we're waiting for. When they therefore were come together, they asked of him, saying, Yeshua, wilt thou at this time restore again the kingdom to Israel? That's what we're hoping for. That's what we're waiting for. And we wait by the Ruach, or the Most High Spirit, and his name is Yahuwah. Some call him Yah, some call him Yahweh, some call him Yahweh. But that's what we're waiting for. We're waiting to see Yeshua come to gather the Israelites. All praises to our Father. So what verse was that? That was verse 5. All right, let's go and drop down to verse 18. We can wrap up this chapter. So Galations 5 and 18. But if ye be led of the Spirit, ye are not under the law. Again, Mishpachah, the law is mentioned. So we know these are Israelites. And we mentioned the Spirit again. To be led of the Spirit, this Spirit is the Most High Yah. There's only one Spirit, and he's the Most High Yah, Yahuwah. And you can't be led of the Most High if the Most High don't know you. You can't be led of the Most High if the Most High don't know you. Amos 3 and 1. Amos 3 and 1. So let's drop down to verse 24. And he says, and they that are Christ have crucified the flesh with the affections and lusts. And they that are Christ. Who are Christ? Well, let's find out who belongs to Christ. Matthew 10 and 6. Matthew 10 and 6. And these are Yeshua's own words. We'll start at verse 5. These 12 Yeshua sent forth and commanded them, saying, Go not into the way of the Gentiles, and into any city of the Samaritans enter ye not. Verse 6. But go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. How can you belong to Christ or Yeshua if he's telling his disciples, just go looking for Israelites? Just go looking for Israelites. How can you belong to Christ if he told his disciples, go look for my brothers. Don't look for anyone else but Israelites. Let's bring out some more witnesses. Let's go to Matthew. Let's drop down to verse 23. Matthew 10 and 23. Matthew 10 and 23. Yeshua says, but when they persecute you in this city, flee ye into another. For verily I say unto you, ye shall not have gone over the cities of Israel. Ye shall not have gone over the cities of Israel till the Son of Man be come. He just told the disciples, which pretty much he was talking to our generation. Sorry, Mishpaka, I'm getting excited here. He just told them, you're not going to have time to go over all the cities where Israel are. I hope you can see that. He says, you're not even going to have enough time to go find all the Israelites before I come back in, before I return. But again, how can you belong to Christ if he's not looking for you? Let's get it again in Matthew chapter 15. Matthew 15, and we'll pick it up at 15 and 24. So we know the story. It's a famous story. But he answered and said, let me make the screen bigger. I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. How can you belong to Christ if he's not looking for you? How can you be Christ or belong to Yeshua if he's not looking for you? Again, let's get one more. Let's get a third witness. Let's get Matthew chapter 19. Matthew 19, and we'll pick it up at verse 28. So Peter asked Yeshua an honest question. Peter says, we done left everything and everyone for you. What's going to be our reward for this, for this sacrifice? We're lonely. We gave up houses, children, wives. This is what Yeshua told Peter. Verse 28. And Yeshua said unto them, verily I say unto you, that ye which have followed me in the regeneration, when the Son of Man shall sit in the throne of his glory, ye also shall sit upon 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. Why didn't he say judging the world? He says you're going to sit on 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. You can't belong to Christ if he's not looking for you. That's not my words. That's in the book. That's in the book. So again, we have to put the Hebraic understanding back in these scrolls. With that, let's move on to chapter 6. And the first one, right away, this is really redundant now, family, but let's just do this last chapter. Brethren, we address this. This is physical, blood-born descendants of Jacob. Let's take our next one. Verse 2. Bear ye one another's burdens. And what you're going to do if you do that, and so fulfill the law of Christ. Bear ye one another's burdens, and you're going to fulfill the law of Christ. What is the law of Christ? What is the law of Christ? Let's find out what the law of Christ is. Matthew 22. I'm sorry, Mishpaka. It's it really gets like it gets redundant after a while. Like Paul never changes his audience. He never changes his writing style. So it really gets redundant after a while. So let's get Matthew 22 and let's get to 36. We're going to find out what's the law of Christ. So they say, Master, which is the great commandment in the law? Yeshua said unto him, Thou shalt love Yahuwah your Elohim with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like unto it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. So this is the law of Yeshua. Nothing different. He just reminded them of the Torah. So now when Paul tells us in Galations that when you bear one another's burdens, you fulfill the law of Christ, well, we know he's talking to Israelites. All praises. He's talking to Israelites. Let's just take one more, and we're going to say shalom because, you know, it doesn't take all night to see this. Last one, verse 16. Verse 16. He says, As many as walk according to this rule, peace be on them, and mercy and upon the Israel of God. I read it again. And as many as walk according to this rule, peace be on them, and mercy, and upon the Israel of God. Why would you mention the Israel of God if these were not Israelites? Family, it's time for the house of Jacob to awake, come back to our heritage, and
Deuteronomy 32:9, for the Most High's portion is his people. Jacob is the allot of his inheritance.
It's time for us to come back to our heritage. It's time for us to wake up, reclaim our identity, reclaim our book, and live out these laws, statutes, and commandments the best of our ability while we wait for our King. I pray that this presentation has been enlightening to some. We're finished with Galations. We're going to move on to Shaul's Israelite letters, and we're going to cover Ephesians. We're coming upon the pagan New Year. The Romans say we're going into 2019. So we'll get into Ephesians after this pagan New Year begins. But family, from cover to cover, this Bible is talking to Hebrews. This Bible is written by Hebrews to Hebrews. This Bible was the first FUBU, for us, by us. Are we saying it's only going to be Israelites? No. Because if you know the scrolls, other nations are going to flock to us. Other nations are going to be with us. So we're not being gatekeepers saying who can come, who can't. We're just teaching truth for truth's sake. We're teaching truth for truth's sake. The Torah group does not attack any man, woman, or church. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against powers and rulers of darkness and high places. We teach truth, we expose false doctrine, and we give all praises and honor to our King, King Yeshua, for his blood that restores and redeems. So I pray that this has gotten someone has gotten some understanding from this. As always, Mishpachah, you can't take my word for anything. Stop letting men stand in front of you for hours performing. If someone is doing more talking than reading, it's time to get up and leave. Hold these men accountable. I know many of you brothers message me behind the scenes saying you've been seeing these things too. All these contradictions that we're bringing out, a lot of the brothers inside the churches are telling me they've been seeing it. But because they don't want to, disrupt the home, they don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, they continue to go with the status quo. You should have seen how many brothers on my Facebook page who's telling me they know Christmas is pagan, but yet they're taking family photos in front of a Christmas tree. Family, it's time for Jacob to wake up. All praise and honor goes to my Father, mighty Yah. Thank you for the blood of Yeshua that restores and redeems Israel. Shalom, family. Shalom, shalom.
And the question is, who are God's chosen people?
The first thing I want to talk about is the appearance of the ancient Hebrew Israelites.
You need to know who the true Jews are.
No matter how much scripture you all are presented with regarding who the Hebrews in the Bible were and who they are in the earth today.
See, I've been doing a lot of reading, and I'm starting to believe that God's chosen people